All right, welcome back to Making the Brand. We have a special guest here with us, guest, friend, coach, and friend, I would say, overall. We've got Phil Sanders. Phil, you've had so many different brands over the past probably 2 or 3 years. I don't know how
so many years, yeah. 15 years of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So how do you introduce yourself?
Man, that's a tough one. Right now, I would say founder of Multiply, and we do manage financial services. Mm-hmm. But over time, I think that's just evolved based on I'm a big jump in and figure it out kind of guy, like with entrepreneurship. So kind of building in public, and especially with this last one over the past 3 years, have been evolving from coaching to more niche coaching to now just the more managed services. So that's how I introduce myself. I don't know if that's good or not.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So I do want to take you back to, I think, last summer in Charlotte at the Collide conference. And, it was part of the coaching group that you were part of, mm-hmm. and it was put on. Heather and I both went. And I will say that your session was one of the best things I've seen.
Wow.
Like I'm not even joking. It had me choked up, just hearing your journey, because it was just so raw and real, and it's not what you see online, and it's not what you see on Instagram. It's definitely not what you see on LinkedIn, but it spoke to just the ups and downs of business, and just the human spirit and resilience. And I would say that that's one of the best talks I've ever sat in on. And just thank you for that vulnerability. And I think Heather would probably agree with that. But tell us your journey. I know it's multifaceted, and we can go on for hours about it, but you have such a unique journey in business of starting a company, gets decimated by COVID, and how you've kind of reshaped and bounced back. But I would just love for people to hear your story.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be hard to wrap that all up in just one episode, but I think, entrepreneurship has always been very tied to me. My wife and I started our first company together a year after we got married. So we got married super young, 22, 23, fresh out of college. And we honestly started our first business because we did the numbers of we were barely making anything, and we're we could do this, we can do this. And so it's always been I don't have the traditional education. I wasn't studying entrepreneurship in college or whatever. We just jumped in and figured it out, And I think that's the way that our entire 20s went, was just hey, we're just figuring this out. So from an entrepreneurship standpoint, I'm taking the cues that you're reading through Instagram. What are these people telling us? Okay, so more is better, or we want size, we want speed, we want these things. And I think for me, that really internally, I'm also a quick start kind of guy. So, throughout my 20s, I'm doing photography and design. That was our first business. Then we got into co-working, and then we kind of had this opportunity to start this retail space. And that retail space was what really took off. We went from our businesses doing 300, 500K a year to 3-4 million, you know? And I think, and so you go from a team size of 1 to 2 to 30, and it really is, you think, oh, I'm going to get this windfall of revenue, and that's just going to solve all my problems. And that, because I just was so inexperienced in so many ways. And so just chasing that higher number through my 20s, and finally I got it, and it just kicked my absolute ass, and then mixing the layers of families growing, mortgages, all that stuff. So I think from an entrepreneurship standpoint and from a story standpoint, so much of my story really starts with when that retail space came into existence. And I always say, as an entrepreneur, you build up to your ceiling, and you kind of find this wall, and that wall is really what kind of sets us back. It kind of breaks us. So I found that wall with Citizen Supply, and just leadership. How do I lead this? How do I navigate my financials? How do I negotiate these deals? How do I understand kind of the ebbs and flows of my business?
Right.
And it was interesting because with that business, life doesn't stop at all. So during that business was also when we started losing some family members and having kids. And it was interesting to see how the thing I was chasing, I had prioritized it over other things in my life. And then once I saw those things in my life start happening, I was man, I've got to find a way to correct this order. The order was off. It wasn't saying that the business I was bad. It was just the order was off.
Priority, you mean?
Yeah. Okay. So just how much time I'm spending at home, or just the level of energy I had when I was getting home,
Yeah.
like those kinds of things. I was like, man, the size of business, the opportunities in business isn't worth this cost.
Yeah.
You know, it's not worth the cost of missing my kids years 1 through 3 or whatever. So 2018 to 2019, you know, some big things happened, and I was like really reshaping a lot of stuff, like giving up more trust to my team, giving them more clarity, giving them more opportunity, like really being more transparent, like those kind of really key things that it takes to have like a self-managed company. And we were really, so we had shifted a lot of that stuff around. And then right at the point we're like, man, we're finally getting it. Like COVID hits, and you know, we're like a brick and mortar only business. And if COVID destroyed anything, it was brick and mortar only businesses. So then that just kind of, you think you're getting up and you get shoved back down like 10 feet. And ultimately, like what I would say is just like the thing that I thought would just kill me. Like I think bankruptcy is every entrepreneur's like worst nightmare. Right. That ended up happening because of all the effects of COVID. Yeah. And after I went through that and you realize it doesn't kill me, like there was almost this new sense of like, why the hell aren't people like talking more about this shit that's really going on? Yeah. So during that conference, it was really, I mean, I got discharged from bankruptcy in January, and I give that talk in April. So all that's like super fresh. And I think that the reason it was so emotional is like, there's such a sense of just like gratitude and such a sense of like how much this means. And like, hey, you really just have this like present moment. Like, why are we trying to bring ego into the conversation? Why are we trying to build like this kind of status thing that isn't real? Like, let's just like build a business that is like, we're putting in our best effort, but also like not at the sacrifice of what's at home, you know? Anyway, so there was like a lot of that came into it, but I think that I've been trying to build this next piece, like this next business on the foundation of everything I learned. And it's pretty incredible to see it too, honestly, because it's a lot slower, but you almost over time move faster.
Yeah, I gotcha. And so, you know, we've talked about faith a little bit on a few occasions, but like, what do you feel? Obviously, you've learned things from a business perspective, but what do you feel like the lesson was
on the faith side
for you, just in general, like just faith or just on the personal side of like going through that situation?
Oh man, I mean, so many. I think the main thing is order. Like, so it's different a little bit for everybody, but it in general is like faith, family, you know, like key relationships, business. And I think when you look at what is the foundation, like what's the first thing you do in the morning? If it's check emails, okay, there's a good insight into your order, you know? And when you want to correct the order, you like, let's just say it's physical health. You know, I think there's a lot of my friends and myself included, when business started taking off, you just sacrifice your health. Yeah. And over time it doesn't work. But initially, like you get that quick sprint of like, oh, if I work 12 hours a day, 7 days in a row, like I'm solving the thing. But then over time you're like, why do I feel like this chronic pain in my back or whatever? But like the main lesson for me is, it's like pace. Like I want this pace that I can just hit forever. Yeah. And I think if you look at what's the pace that you can hit forever, like it's founded in you having whatever your priorities are, like in the right order. And that, because again, if you say work will fill whatever container you give it. If you give it everything, it'll take all of you. Right. But if you say, hey, you have to fit 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, whatever it is, if you have to fit this container, then you're forcing it into this right place. You know what I'm saying? And I think that it takes real guts, because you have to have the faith that you'll figure it out. It's like kids, right? Like you have this amount of time. You don't have the time for kids. Kids come in your life, and then you just figure it out, because now you have more parameters on your time, you know? Right. So I wouldn't say that's like one lesson I learned, but I think the foundation of it is just, hey, just in the morning, like, this is what I do. Like, this is how I operate in the business. This is my priority list.
So do you feel, because obviously I think many entrepreneurs are wired similarly, of just like 100 miles an hour, but like, do you feel like shifting your priorities, you feel like you're sacrificing some of the business outcome or performance, and like not putting in the 10 hours or 12 hours, like almost like that founder's guilt of like, and I mean, family is obviously the best thing to spend time away from work in, but do you feel like do you ever wrestle with that of like, oh man, I'm not going all in as much as I could?
I mean, I don't know. That's an interesting question, because like I work 7 to 5. What is that? Is that 10 hours? Is that?
Yeah.
That's 10 hours. Yeah. So I work 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
But I wake up at like 4:30.
Yeah.
So I think that it's what I was doing previously was like, I'd have a few drinks at night and wake up at like 7:30, you know? And so what I sacrificed was alcohol. I'm getting up earlier. Yeah. So now I'm getting the things I need to get done first, but I'm also like, I need to be off at this time because I got 3 kids. I need to spend time with them. Right. Yeah. I think that for me, like when I look at growth, like everybody talks about revenue, like, hey, how big is your company? Whatever. Like it's this kind of vanity metric. Yeah. Nobody really talks about how profitable that revenue is. Yeah. And so when we look at the question of like, am I kind of frustrated sometimes at my revenue growth? Of course. Like, because I love to move fast. Like I'm like, let's fucking go. Like this is me, you know? Yeah. But when I look at what really matters, I'm paying myself the same $3-4 million company. My personal take home is the exact same as it was with a company that's a fraction of the size. So I think that when we look at, I think sometimes revenue can get wide versus deep. So if you have a revenue of, let's say 5 million, like you want it to be deep. Like I am getting the margins I need at 5 million. Not I got to 5 million by giving a discounted deal and scaled, and I actually can't afford, I can't cash flow this thing forward, you know? Yeah. And so I think for me, when I get in that mentality in my head of like, bro, you are so far behind where you need to be, I'm just like, let's just look at the facts here, you know? And I trace back, like I look at attribution a lot, like, and I try to look at, if these are my results, like how did I get to these results? Like, let's look at my time, like how much time am I spending in sales or fulfillment or all these things. And I think that there's definitely a journey of an entrepreneur, like a bootstrapped entrepreneur, where you have to start in this like hustle mode, like you do everything, and then you got your small little tight team. So it takes a while before you actually get to this point where you're like, I've got decision makers on my team that I can delegate this entire lane to, you know? Right. But I think the answer is always like, I would love it to grow faster. Yeah,
definitely.
You know, but it has to grow in the right way, you know?
Yeah. So the opposite question of that is, you know, this is not for the faint of heart, and it's like, takes resilience, it takes grit, it takes perseverance, but like, how do you know when to call it? Like, so like you made the call that
call the business.
Yeah. Like you made the call that like a lot of business owners never do, and just run it into perpetuity for better or worse. But like, what were some of your decision points around that of like, this can't go on this way?
It's complicated. I mean, it really has to be, it's unique to everybody. There's no formula to it. I think by and large, it's like when the cost is too great, you know? And I think that the path to financial health was quicker to cut it and rebuild than it was to turn the ship around. Like the level of debt, the nuances in those relationships, the nuances in like leases and supply chain, like all those things were, I would have had to bat like 1,000, like 3 years straight to turn it around. But I think when you look at just like, if you put some kind of formula to it, wise counsel, like a group of people that they care for you, but they can give you objective feedback on just like, here's the financial like status of your business, and this is what it will take to get it back. Like I had a really good board, and they were just like, you know, you are uninvestable at this point. Like you're going to spend the next 5 years building this back, and then maybe you'd get an investor to come in here, you know, because I had access to like another $1 million in line of credit. And they're like, if you take that, like you get into a whole different level, you know? So I think the wise counsel piece, super key. I think it was like Brene Brown. She said this thing once. She's like, I have like a little like 1 inch by 1 inch card, and on that card I have the names of the people I actually listen to. And so it's like, if I had that card, it would have been my board, my wife. You know, my wife was giving me. There was never like shame in the conversation. Like she genuinely wanted what was best for me, and for us. And so like when I looked at what it would cost for me to continue in that, and she's like, I mean, nobody, like kids don't ask you to start a business. Right. They don't ask that. They don't care. They just want to hang out with you. So it's like, for her, she's like, well, we get Phil back, you know? And so like, when you start looking at some of this stuff, you're like, man, even just like my own level of energy to turn the ship around. Like that's really what I looked at. Because, and again, like for me, the specifically the lease and the way we structured our contracts with like our vendors were going to have to change pretty drastically. And so there was a few natural things that were happening, like lease renewals, contract renewals were coming up. there's this like natural breaking point.
Yeah.
The other thing that we looked at too was like the job market was like white hot. Like, I mean, you could just put in a resume and get hired for like a really good, wage rate. And so we knew our employees would be taken care of. Like we really did the best we could with it. But sometimes like you said, like the cockroach style makes sense. Like it's just like, you got to drill down. So I think the main thing is like, you just got to be incredibly present to where the business is, what it's going to require of you, and navigate that. But like, counsel and those relationships is really where.
Yeah. Cause I know we've talked about this and I've talked to other entrepreneurs and other people about it, is just like what fuels you. And for me, I think it's like a lot of like freakish optimism. Yeah. But I think you can also say that's like delusional positivity too. It's like, we're going to get the next deal. We're going to get the next deal. We're going to get the next deal. And it's just a matter of time, I think, before you get the next deal, but it's just like, how much pain can you take and for how long? And the quote I like on that is just like, businesses don't fail. It's just like the founder can't take any more pain for a certain amount of time. But it's just interesting to hear your story. And I totally agree with that, because for us, like going in year 15 where we're at now, it's like the first 10 years, I would say it was just like the vanity metric of top line growth. And like we grew 20% this year, we grew 40% this year, we grew 100% this year. And like, we were flat one year and that was terrible. But really just focusing on profitability. And I'd say like over the past probably 5 years, but definitely over the last 3, it's been bottom line growth and it's been profitability and focusing, just on our margins and where we're making money and on which services. And it may not be the biggest revenue producer, but it's, it was eye-opening as we analyzed our numbers with you actually last year, of just one of our biggest revenue producers was producing the least amount of profit. And so, and also just the cash flows of the business, it was impacting that quite a bit. But I do want to talk about some of our work together, just because like you were one of my first phone calls. It was just like, hey, I've got this problem, like I can't figure out. And one of our mutual friends calls it leaks in the bucket. Like, how do you figure out the leaks in the bucket? And I've had multiple accountants and CFOs and things like that, like just not be able to figure out the leaks in the bucket. But I feel like your approach really helped identify it and break it down and give us like, here's a 90-day roadmap. And just you're focused on the wrong things and you're selling the wrong things. And that was the first time that I heard it. I think Heather's been telling me that for a little while, but
well, it's interesting because it's like when we were doing like 3.5-4 million when I look at who I was listening to for financial, when I was like trying to understand, like call it literacy, call it understanding, whatever. But a lot of the people on those podcasts, they're talking about companies that are 10 times the size, like 30 million, 50 million. And when you look at like, okay, the way cash moves through that business is completely different than a business at $1 million, and so I think that was one of the first aha moments, was just like, I'm listening to the wrong people. Like, I need to see like collections, like how quickly are we collecting and how much can we hold that cash in before we pay out other things? Like how long can we keep the cash in the bank, because you have these like transactions coming in and coming out, and that mixed with the other speed of the business. Because again, like your business is smaller, so cash is like much tighter, and also the owner and leadership is in more stuff, so you're like being distracted. So you really need this like simple thing. And I think like the urgency that I have around where is your cash, what are your margins, is what's different in kind of my approach around financials than if like the other bigger firms. They're just like, these are just your numbers. Yes, technically you can make that purchase or whatever, but is anybody asking like, but should we like let's look at the trends of the business? And so I think a lot of what it is with financials at like under 10 million is like the gut of an entrepreneur, the gut of that small, tight leadership team is data. And you got to find a way to make that gut knowledge present in like the reporting. Like, so it's January. Like, is this the time we should be like booking deals, or is this the time we should be like nurturing, or is it what season are we in the business? And I think that like there's a lot of authority that comes once you like understand that, because otherwise you're just going to be, we just need more revenue. Like that's always the case. And I totally get it. Like if you have a number one client, and let's say they're bringing in like to your company, let's say 250 grand, and your margins might be the lowest, but you're like, but it's money, like it's just money, and we can float these things with it. So like I understand that side. And I think that one of the big differences between like a Fortress and what I had was Like retail is impulse buys, it's lower margin. So one of the things I looked at was like, what's the ability of my model to hit this thing, like this, not like lifestyle, like the money, but like spending my time the way I want to spend it, like building the team I want to have. Like, what's the ability for this thing to hit that goal? And when I looked at my model, it was like volume, just purely volume. Like you got to hit this volume. And with retail, there's so many nuances. Like it's pretty thin, but you've got to nail brand, you've got to nail conversion tag, you got to nail all this stuff. Right. And you're in services, so you have a higher margin, and you could say like, hey, we're going to just create this new product. Yeah. And you could come out with a very in line with the same brand, like almost like you're launching something new, but it's, you know, there's a lot more things you could do, you know, with it. So I think from like our work together, like in my work with most of my clients, it's just like, yo, what do we need to do? Like almost always that some level of increase clarity, like reporting around the numbers that they need to see, and some level of strategic like advisement around, you know, how you deal with whatever position you're in. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that's really good. And I think it was just great experience of working with you and just laying out the 90-day roadmap. And it's like, here's what we're focused on, and can't do it all in 90 days. And some of the stuff is going to be a 6-month deal or 8-month deal or 12-month deal, far beyond our engagement. But here's the roadmap of like, here's what's actionable now. Here's what you need to do now. Here's where you need to cut. Here's where you need to trim. Here's where you need to sell and lean in. So I think that it was just an awesome experience, and I would highly recommend everybody works with you.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, whatever stage of growth or whatever stage you're in business, just because I think there's actionable insights there. Yeah. And, you know, for me, I went through numerous accounting firms and accountants and fractional CFOs and accounting managers to ultimately arrive at like what I got from our engagement in 90 days was better than what I had from multiple like professional firms. Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's crazy. Like I think 90% of my clients, I look inside of their company, I'm like, their bookkeeper, whatever they have set up, it's total shit. Yeah. And so I think that's what I think a lot of people need to hear too. Entrepreneurs is, what is it? It's like the emperor with no clothes or whatever. Like you're not the dummy. Like this is everybody, you know? And so like at a gut level, if you feel like, man, this is off, like I don't understand these, then go find another solution. Right. And that was really what I think kept me so locked in my terrible situation at my first company. I was like, everybody else has this figured out but me, you know, or like if I knew what I was doing, like, and so I was scared to legitimately be like, hey, bookkeeper. Yeah. I don't get this report you just sent me. Can you just sit with me for an hour and like talk to me like I'm 5, right? You know, like, okay, so that comes in here and I pay them. And then like my percentage on this debt is, you know, like how does this all work? Yeah. And I think that curiosity level is what I hope to really foster in what we're doing, because it's the ultimate goal is for you and for Heather and for your leader, like for your team to understand, hey, this is how my company works. And like, if I'm in this situation, all right, these are levers I can pull. Like, you know, that is authority. And I think that is just, that moves you from being in a position of going like, we just gotta go make more sales to, hey, like we're in control. Yeah. And I think that, you know, and the brilliant thing that you did was you did it. Like you're like, let's just figure this out. And because now, I mean, that was September, and now we're 8 months. Whereas I think a lot of people, hey, let me just get these 3 more things done, and then we'll get started. And I think that you just keep kicking that can until we finally, when I talk about that wall, that's what I'm talking about. It's like that you hit that wall and you've got to decide, I'm going to solve this for good. Yeah. And when I look at my mentors, any people that I respect in business, they hit that wall and then they say, like, I'm solving this. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you look at, I don't know if this is with you, but like peers, whatever, they mostly hit this around like 33 to 37 years old. There's something that happens and then they solve it. And then however they solve that thing or however they treat that process becomes the foundation for that next, which, so we're seeing success and so, you know, it's kind of a crazy thing.
Yeah. And I think, you know, as you talk about the wall, it's like, there's 2 options. It's either take your ball and go home, or it's you run through it and figure out a way. And, I mean, I'm happy, you know, looking back after a few months of just, you know, thankful, grateful that we've kind of figured a way through. And, you know, there's another wall, and then there's another wall, and then there's another wall.
Well, there'll always be walls. Yeah.
It's a matter of how we approach it. But what would you say to somebody that's, you know, first of all, to back up, is I love what you post on LinkedIn, it's like, I've told you this before, like it makes you feel something.
Oh,
and
good.
I think it's just written well, and obviously it's a nice picture of you doing something interesting. And
there's a photo of Phil. Yeah, if you want to see photos of Phil, follow me on LinkedIn.
But I think everybody should follow you just because like just the storytelling of it, and just it's just good. But like, what would you say to that person who's unsure of what they're doing on the finance end? Because I do agree with you 100%. It's just like, most business owners are not MBAs or not finance majors or accounting majors, and we're learning that part of the game as we go, and with very little training. And so, what would you say to that founder or entrepreneur that's kind of like stuck in the woods?
I think it's just like fight like hell until you get clarity, like on actually where you stand. And you keep fighting until you find the person that helps you find it. Like it's probably, if you can't find it on your own, then you need to have somebody that helps you find it. And it's not going to be fun. Like there's, I don't know. I think that LinkedIn is great. LinkedIn's also like the worst, So it's like everybody for some reason is like an expert that can teach you how to do whatever they get paid for in 5 steps. Yep. But for me, I had a really terrible bookkeeper and accountant when I started that company. And I just viewed financials as always like a box to check versus like an active part in the business. And the things that I should have expected out of that finance role, I was expecting either out of myself or out of like other people on the team in a weird way. And so we'd meet and we'd talk financials, but I was just like, I don't know, whatever. Like this, I don't understand this, or, we just got to go get more revenue. And I actually just ironically wrote about this on LinkedIn. I got a bill from the Department of Revenue, which is like taxes, and she didn't pay our sales tax. So I got like a $90,000 bill because she just didn't pay them. But we'd also already spent that money, and that was when I was like, you're done, like whatever. And I mean, this is one of the biggest, like just miracles. I think one of my friends had the company she was like chief of staff for and like CFO had just sold. So she was out and she was building up her own book of business. And she's like, hey, can I come in here and like do this with you? Like, would you want to be a client? And I was like, hell yes, And so she could do the bookkeeping all the way to CFO. So I had this very unique experience of having somebody come in. They helped reorganize the books, and then tell me why, like, and teach me why. Yeah. And I think that once the way I felt after 90 days, 6 months with her was the thing I wanted to feel forever, which is like, oh, this is what I'm doing year over year. This is what I'm doing, like all this stuff. And that, I think just having that, going from the question of like, do I have what it takes, to then understanding like what I need to do to hit these things, like just specific, that clarity piece is the foundation of it all. Because then once you have the clarity, then the question is like, are you going to do it? Yeah. And I think that's really where the entrepreneur, that's where you learn, do I have what it takes to do this? Because the true entrepreneur be like, that's what I need to solve. Like, I'm going to go solve that thing. Then it turns into like, now it's on you because you know clearly. Yeah. Otherwise, you almost feel like you have this excuse, like, I don't know what the problem is. I'm just going to keep going for revenue. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just a matter of like keeping going day to day and just doing the same thing over and over again without the clarity piece. And I'm glad you're hitting on that. And I'm glad that's part of your, I like what you said. It was just like, fight like hell until you have clarity. And that's simple, but it's not easy. And definitely I think, one of the things that you told us that I appreciate is like, this is going to suck. Like, it's not going to be fun for the next 90 days. It's not going to be fun for the next 120, 180 days. But like coming out of it, it's like you have greater clarity, greater profit, greater command of your business. Yeah. And I think it really does take, it's too much for just the entrepreneur to carry by themselves. Like, I mean, you two, Heather and you and your team, like, I just think that, again, we put all this pressure on ourselves to know this stuff and then to create the space and to create the conversation. Like, now it's a shared load. Yeah. Is like really empowering. It's like the thing that you think, if you say like, I don't know how to do this, like, oh, the team's going to run away or whatever, like, to realize actually the opposite happens of like, no, they respect you more and like, they can actually help a lot, and like to have more minds around like, how do we solve, like, oh, here's the problem, we're having this problem with this revenue thing, like how would we solve for this, like to have more people involved in that is actually like incredibly life-giving,
you
know?
Agreed.
Just even like listening to you guys reviewing these last few months.
Yeah.
I've realized how much we've learned.
Yeah.
You know, and also in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh man, my to-do list is just getting longer and
Yeah.
longer right now because.
But you especially, because you know, Joel is great. He's visionary. So, but like the details of it, like it's been great working with you because somebody has to take on this. I'm going to dig into this product or this service and find out, okay, how much are we spending? Like we charge this, how much are we spending in all these like nuanced details? And that is incredibly difficult to do. So you've done like a ton of work around that stuff, which is cool to see. I mean, how do you feel like now that you've gone into that level, how do you feel about like just the understanding of the business? Like, do you feel like a deeper knowledge of just like what it is you're coming into every day?
It's surprising how much knowing, like actually looking at the numbers actually advises us on what to do now.
Yeah.
It's kind of this mindset of like, how was I doing it before?
Yeah, right.
Like, I can't believe that we weren't looking at these, at this data. Almost all of our meetings now have some type of Google sheet now.
Just around the numbers and
stuff?
Yes,
it's around the numbers. We have to look at them and just go into that point of like just a transformation of understanding.
Yeah.
And as you were iterating earlier, it's that clarity, like we have to know the clarity.
Yeah.
We have to understand this and how we're digesting it, because we're not all going to be accountants.
Yeah, you shouldn't be.
No, exactly. But we need to be able to digest what we need out of those numbers to make the right decisions for the business.
Yeah. Do you feel like if you went back to, I don't know, a year ago, 8 months ago, whenever we first started talking, if you went back there, what would you say like was one thing you wish you started sooner? Like what, like, I don't know what took the longest to like convince you how to do this, but like if you went back, like what do you think is like the most valuable piece of it, of the process?
Oh, it's so hard because there's so many puzzle pieces that now actually work together. But I think it probably would have been that initial like breakdown every single project that we did. And then we saw what the numbers were at the end of it, put all those numbers together and what's actually building out your cash flow.
Yeah. It's so good though, because it's like, that's my goal, is really clear numbers should make it very clear now where you go spend your time. Like it should be the thing that informs like, hey, what's priority? Like, where am I spending my time? What am I getting my team to do? So you feel like it's done that?
Oh, 100%. Like we have milestones now where it's like, hey, when we start hitting these numbers, these are the things that it activates.
Yeah.
Prior, it's like everyone just kind of goes off of intuition, where they think like, I think we're ready to start like, hiring on these different team members or building out this different service or selling these things.
Yeah.
But are you actually, is your business ready for it?
Yeah.
So, the numbers just say it all. The numbers never lie.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's helped like you and Joel in your conversations, like alignment, because that was always a big disconnect. Like I had a director of retail, like I had my top people that were more operationally minded, they were helping me with a lot of stuff. And I remember once, and I waited way too long, but once we opened up more of the books and like really started talking those conversations together, like that's the thing that brought us together. Does that make sense? Like I kept on waiting for my finances to be better to then talk about them with them. But the only way they would get better is by talking about them with them. Does that make sense? It's almost like that's the precursor to the financial results I wanted. So do you feel like some of these conversations with Joel or maybe some people in your leadership team, like it's actually helping you have that conversation? Like it's really aligning, like this is the thing we need to talk about?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, there was this educational aspect of even us being on the same wavelength of what does this term actually mean? You know, because I think one thing that we discovered is one person would say it one way, another person was saying it another way. And it's like we were speaking the same language, but we were understanding it differently. And so now that we are all on the same page, it's like the communication and the understanding of being like, oh yeah, like we're looking at it the same way. So I think, just from that aspect of, understanding makes our communication a heck of a lot stronger.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, so you were saying that something was life-giving. If
Oh yeah, story. No, like what's interesting about like I think once you do hit that wall, or once you do kind of go through a very incredibly difficult season of business, like for me, the mentality, like business is inherently risk. Like it is risk. Like there's a reason why there's more reward on the other side of it. If you figure it out, it's because there's a risk that most people aren't willing to take. So I was just, if there's a pendulum of risk, starting out business was on the almost like suicidal level of risk. Like I was just untouchable, you know? And so I was just saying yes to opportunities that were more, because that's all I wanted. Yeah. And then when I got hit, like when it's like the reckoning came, I swung to the other side, which was like almost like a level of like cowardice, like ultimate safety. Like I'm going to be so safe with my business, you know? And that's kind of how I started when I started getting into coaching. Cause like I started coaching while I was going through bankruptcy. Like we spent all of our money trying to save the last business. And then I spent all the money on like attorneys and all this stuff. So from a cash perspective, like I had no cash. So I had to, and I couldn't go get a full-time job because like I had to navigate the bankruptcy side. So all I could do was kind of these like project-based things. So I started coaching, but I was like, I'm going to get paid this amount of money, going to get paid on the first. Like I'm going to have this super dialed, and it doesn't like that's not business. Like it doesn't like there's curveballs that happen. All these, it's not like, you know, if it'll happen, it's just when. Yeah. So I swung back to this other side. And I think over the last 3 years, I've moved more and more risky, because you have to be able to understand where you're at on that spectrum. Like when is it suicidal? When is it cowardice? And I think that there's certain seasons where like, hey, it makes actually more sense for us to be more risky. And hey, this is a season where we got to come back on the risk scale. And so once I kind of gave myself permission to say like, hey, you need to go take on more risk. Like, and I had these open conversations with my wife of just like, I can't grow this thing unless I take on more risk. Cause like, again, like, as you know, it's like revenue's growing. And then you have this question of, I can't afford what I need to grow the business. Like I can't afford that position yet. And you stay in this battle of like, how can I go make the money to then pay for them? And it's like, I can't make that money until I actually get them on the team, you know? Yeah. So I think that for me, one of the big things is just understanding where I'm at in the risk, understanding what that means, and then really just being clear about it, and then just like all in on it, like just all in.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, the parallel for me, obviously we have there's different risk tolerances for everybody. And I think like God's given us spouses, significant others that balance us out. Yeah. Otherwise it's just like two crazy people together. Yeah. At least I know for my marriage, it's, you know, Sharon balances me out for sure on the risk tolerance. And but I think of it also in like abundance versus scarcity mindset. Yeah. And I'm sure like a lot of people that you coach are in that like scarcity mindset of like, I don't have enough, or I need to make this stretch or last or whatnot. But how do you shift people from that scarcity mindset to the abundance mindset? Or is it the same scale of risk of like, you got to kind of, it ebbs and flows?
I think it depends. I mean, you're an optimist. You probably just exist more in that abundance naturally. So I think when you shift to more scarcity, you're probably in a state of like fear, you know? And so I think it's more about, are you in a fearful state? I think when you talk about scarcity, it's founded in like fear. And I don't think all fear is wrong. Like there's risk in business, and you have to be aware of what does it mean if we take on this debt and maybe we don't do what we think we're going to be able to do with like infusing this cash, building this team, whatever. Like, let's say we are not conservative enough in our projections, and like, what happens if these scenarios happen, you know? So I think that like some level of fear is good when we're making plans, just to understand like the risk of what we're doing. But then ultimately, I think the best entrepreneurs, they're gonna get it no matter what. Like they have that optimism. And again, back to the bankruptcy side is once, I don't know if you've experienced like losing a loved one, like to cancer, or, you know, having friends go through cancer, something like that. But what happens in those things is you realize how many other people also go through those things, you know? And with the bankruptcy, it's the same thing. I went through it, and then like all these people started coming out of the woodwork and be like, hey man, I didn't actually file, but I was like functionally bankrupt. Wow. Like one of my He's actually one of my brother's mentors, super well respected in the business community in Atlanta. Like I just look up to him. Like he's at this really awesome PE firm, all this stuff. And we were on the phone and he was like, I don't know if you know this, but I was functionally bankrupt. And I was like, how old were you? He was like 40. He was like, I saved my house off the courthouse steps.
Wow.
Like, you know, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like it's just so crazy. So you just see all these people. Oh, I always see all these people that I thought were just like, man, they never dealt with this fallout or whatever. And it's like, no, like you went through it. And so just understanding like some of the stuff just like, it just is what happens. And to almost like stop putting so much emotion into, we lost this client, or, you know, this employee walked with all this IP, you know, or whatever. It's like, hey, like this happens. It's like, how can we trigger that optimist mindset, that abundance, not be like stupid with it, like oh, nothing happened, but like learn from it and just like keep fighting for this position of like confidence and courage and stuff moving forward, versus like, all right, now we're just gonna be like 10 times more careful. It's like just be like, my dream is to be able to, like for myself, is to be able to talk very candidly about like realities and still hold vision. Like, hey, employee, if you don't do this well, then this is the cost of that. And then vision, you know, like to be in the same breath, to not just to be like, for that just to be me, versus like things are going bad, now I move into this kind of space as a leader. It's like to be able to hold both those things really well.
And not be reactive. And we talk about that all the time, of like being proactive versus reactive. But I think this, you know, what you just said touches on something you said earlier, is everything you see online is like the 5-step process for this, and, you know, follow this tweet to do that. But like, and everybody's a guru who's, you know, hit a single or hit a double, but like, you know, it's rarely the guys that have hit home runs that are like, you know, doing that because they're trying to hit the next home run. But the one thing I appreciate about you, or one of many, is just like you've been there, and you get it, and like you're speaking from reality and you're speaking from experience, and it's not just like hypothetical or theory or hyperbole. It's like very real. Like you've gone through it, and you've come out of it, and you know kind of what to do to help others. And so that I really do appreciate, because, you know, that's something that I say to people that come to me for advice too. It's like, it can help you kind of fast forward through something without having to go through the pain and learn it on your own. But you know, I think this was a great discussion, just to kind of hear your story. I think it's really unique from the millions of entrepreneurs out there. But, you know, what the question I always like to end on is what 100 years from now, what do you want people to remember about Phil Sanders?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, I'm a family man. Like I love my boys, and I have a young daughter, and I love my wife. And I think ultimately that's just what I want people to remember me for. Like as a human, is just like how, like that, those immediate core relationships, just doing really like, cause that's legacy. It's, I mean, clients will come and go, employees will come and go. But if you look at the weight we have in these kids' lives, it's disproportional to everything else. So, like I really want that. Like I want my kids to want to sit at my table when I'm 70. Like I want them to want to come back home. And so like I'm framing how I build my business around being there for them, especially in this season. They're young kids. It's very difficult as a father and young business to like make the time for that, but I think it's completely worth it. I think like in the business realm is like, the way I view financials is it should unlock the entrepreneurs I work with to another level. So like the vision you have for Fortress, the way I want to be remembered is like Phil was a component of me getting Fortress to where, you know, like I'm not the main component in that story. Like you and Heather and the team are. Like y'all are the ones. Like I'm just a guide in the financial spectrum. So I think like I would just love to be in this, I guess, from remembered by, it's like I solved this part of the puzzle for you, and you were able to then see that vision become a reality. Because you know this, like you get that runner's high, you're out running, you get in the zone, you're like, holy shit, like this, we could do this, you know, like I hear you sometimes talking about that, and I think, okay, from a financial standpoint, like what do you need for that to be as the least amount of risk as possible? If you like, what do you need to know as we go forward in this? Like what needs to be true on the financial side for that, you know, vision to come true? I think, and it's just a really interesting time, I think, too, in business, because with where AI is, what it's doing across like all industries, there's just real opportunity, I think, for the visionaries, because so much of the things that just took a really dialed team or somebody on your team to do now can be done at least 80%, there. And so I think it's just like, what's my role, I think, right now as these kind of tides shift a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think, the second piece of that, actually both elements of it, I think you're doing it, because I can say from firsthand experiences, like, you are helping guide companies through different phases of business. And, I will look back at that phase of, hey, Phil, what do we do in this situation, and how you helped us navigate that, like, very, very fondly. But what's next for you? And I know you said you got Multiply going.
Yeah.
And so what's next there?
Yeah, building that. Yeah, I feel really good about it. I mean, the structure or the path to this has been coaching small businesses, and then coaching small businesses around specifically the financials, which is kind of when y'all came into the picture. And now it's moved more into just managed services and coaching, if you need it, around those services. And I'm like, this is it. Like, cause I think that the hard part of the conversation was I would coach or advise an entrepreneur around the numbers. And it's like, it's not that you don't want to do it. It's just like, I can't, like, I got to go grow the business. And I think when I started asking the question of like, do you want me to solve this for you? Almost all the clients I asked that to were like, yes. So, that's cool with Multiply, and I have some advisement around this, is how we're building it. We're trying to build it around like micro teams. And so it's, how do you build like a little micro financial team that can serve like 10 clients, and that team can get better and take the learnings from each client and make everybody better for it. And so I'm really excited about like having this framework, like the mind of an entrepreneur, and building financial services around that. Because what I want to do, my specific niche, like right now starting this off, is to get businesses beyond 10 million. So I'm really working with those businesses under 10 million, because what they need is just different. Like they just need a different set of reporting. They need a different set of communication. They need a different set of like increasing their understanding. And so right now I'm like building my bench of bookkeepers, accountants, controllers, CFOs, and CPAs. And really trying to build that initial client group that's willing to say, like, that want it. I think that's the big thing, is like people, well, I think this is like in coaching a lot. It's like, if somebody doesn't want to change, they're not going to change. And so like the entrepreneurs, and maybe 10 million's beyond what they want to do, but like, man, I want to know these numbers, because I know that when I know them, like now I have the skill set to grow it to that space. And so I want to work with entrepreneurs that are like up for the challenge of growing beyond the level they're currently at. Yeah.
No, I think it's great, because there's a ton of coaches out there, but they're not bringing like the financial acumen or the go and do it for the client. Yeah. And then you have a ton of accounting firms that just, they're going to pull the numbers, they're going to reconcile, they're going to balance everything, and then they're not giving you any level of strategy or insight or coaching. So I think it's really well positioned, uniquely positioned. So how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the website is Multiply, MLTPLY.co. Fancy, like there's no domains available these days. So that's that. LinkedIn, just Phil Sanders. That's where I mostly do most of my like kind of marketing or like posting like content, and I have a newsletter. But really that site, that's what I do. That's through that site, like I'm going to start posting more and more stuff around, like, I think there's this initial kind of thing that we're doing for clients as they come on board, like a profitability and cash assessment that a lot of people have been finding, which is what we did for you guys. Like, hey, next 90, like what is the most important thing? Like, where are you at and what's the most important thing? Because again, the more and more I kind of get in this world, it's like, it takes time to get the books clear, and for an entrepreneur, they need answers like now. So we're trying to create like that front 90, like how do you get like super clear, understand the next 90 days, like all within the initial like part of the like the scope. So multiply.co, that's that. LinkedIn. That's where I'm at.
It's great. And I think it's really important, just because as entrepreneurs, we don't know what we don't know. And so for so long, like you're operating in the blind, and you're just kind of trusting like that the numbers are correct, or that your accountant is doing everything they can properly for your business. And oftentimes it's a rude awakening, like you had with your $90,000 tax bill, and I've had in my career as well, of just like, this didn't get done the way it was supposed to get done, and now I'm realizing it. And then you have to solve for it. So, obviously best of luck for you and Multiply, and hope it multiplies, and we'll be cheering for you.
Yeah, for sure, man. Appreciate it.